wait for, so Councillor Beddoes and Councillor Logans, if you can turn your cameras on, then I'll be able to have council on the screen for just voting and attendance and that sort of stuff.
My camera is on.
Is it?
Yeah, and my
There
mic
you
is
are.
on. Just
I'm coming. I just my laptop was dead, so I'll be on video any minute.
Okay.
just be aware that there seems to be a great deal of delay in my feed. So
Okay.
I might be voting no when I'm actually voting yes.
Okay. Got it. Maybe you can do your eye.
Well, even that, see, I'm going to put my hand
Even
up,
then.
and it's up, and then it's another second later before it shows. But anyways,
Okay.
it's like that all the time. I don't know why. We asked for some help, and I haven't received anything yet. So
we'll get it there.
I think that might just be on your own screen. You seem to be in real time on my screen.
yay.
It's also the Wi-Fi potentially. Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll see how that goes. Okay, so for now we have everyone here. So I will now call the special council meeting of Monday, November 30th to order. Our first item is item 2. I do wish to acknowledge that we are broadcasting from the territory of the Sauk Nation. And item 3 is Ministerial Order M192. So that is that council is holding this meeting without members of the public in attendance. Under Ministerial Order M192, as council chambers cannot safely accommodate the unknown number of public participants wishing to attend. And that council is committed to ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability through the submission of written comments and the provision of live and recorded broadcasts of the meeting. So look for a mover and a seconder for that M192, please. That's moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question then. All in favor? And anyone opposed? And that carries unanimously. So that worked out well. It's just your timing, Councillor Beddoes, was perfect with the vote. So anyway, so next up is item 4, approval of tonight's agenda. And that would be that the agenda for the November 30th, 2020 special meeting of council be adopted as circulated. Look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any questions on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. So that seems to work. Item 5, public question and comments. So I'll just ask our staff, are there any public submissions to read out? And is anyone on Teams or registered to speak?
No, Your Worship, we haven't received any correspondence, nor has anyone registered.
Okay, so seeing that there is nothing at this time, we'll carry on to our first item is in our bylaw section is our 5-year financial plan. So perhaps what I could do is ask all councillors to mute as there is some background noise unless you're speaking, please. And if you need to speak and you're having some technical issues, just let me know. I'll be able to see you. So I'll turn this over to staff, and I do wish to acknowledge Ms. Gray. I know that you've looked to bring this forward, and then of course last week our meeting ran late, so appreciate your patience and certainly all of your work that you and your team have done, and of course all of staff for providing this to us in such a timely manner. So over to staff, please.
Great, thank you. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My first time doing this from Teams here. So I will just try this, sharing my screen. And hopefully, can you guys see the correct version here? Hopefully.
Yes, I can see.
Okay.
There's sort of 2 screens showing the budget presentation, then a smaller one, smaller slide to the right.
Apologies, one sec here. That just one screen now?
Yep, that's the one screen. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I will get right into this here. So we're here to talk about the first draft of the 5-year financial plan of the 2021 to 2025 5-year financial plan. As Mayor Tate stated, this was first presented to council with the first draft on November 9th. And that was a couple days after we had received notification of the COVID Safe Restart Grant funds. And so just due to timing, there wasn't sufficient time to get some proposed expenses to be funded with that grant in the first draft of the budget. So rightfully so, council requested a second draft that would include those some recommendations of the COVID Restart Fund. And so that was the draft that has been prepared and is in front of you guys, council, today for consideration. So I've kind of cut out some of my slides from the other presentation and just kind of focusing in now on what's kind of changed from the first draft of the budget. And still just wanted to highlight that overall the goals of the financial plan are to, have been built around achieving council strategic plan goals, incorporating the citizen budget results feedback, department requests, any feedback that was received from the service level review meeting. And then the one change for today's meeting is, of course, the inclusion of expenses to be funded with the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant. So again, there's still just considered 3 positions added. There's just I'll get to it in a couple slides here, just different recommendations now on how to fund those positions. It includes the service level review request from council at the October 21st meeting, and was to clarify there was no new additions directed by council. It was the advice by council, recommendation from council given to staff was to include the department recommendations in the first draft of the budget, which has been included here. There's a combination of a few outside agency and department requests that I'll get into in detail here in a couple slides. It includes information, obviously funding to carry on with the official community plan work, which will continue in 2021. It also includes annual work for the council strategic plan and some of the recommended projects from the Transportation and Parks and Trails Master Plan that council endorsed earlier this year. And the new addition is the COVID Safe Restart. And so this, you'll see details in the report, and I'll just highlight here some recommendations of funding for certain expenses for 2021, 2022, and 2023. So I'll start with the COVID Safe Restart Grant because that was obviously, a nice welcome surprise for council for the council in the District of Sooke. And so as stated in the letter, and I highlighted it earlier, there's a specific list of costs so far that are considered eligible for this grant. So it can't just be used for overall, coming in with a 0% property tax increase. It has to be tied to COVID and any changes that may have resulted due to COVID. And the province still hasn't issued further guidance on this. So the recommendations that staff are presenting today, we feel fairly confident that this would be an eligible expense considered under this COVID Safe Restart Grant. And once further information, if any further information or direction is provided that may change this, obviously we will present this information back to council for further consideration on how to fund these projects potentially. So the first expense that was going to be an addition in 2021 would be the Chamber of Commerce Service Agreement. And this is, as I stated in my report, this is to support economic development in Sooke. And that kind of, in staff's opinion, kind of goes along with helping the community deliver the services that people depend on in their community and just, providing some economic development support in the community to help Sooke recover from the pandemic that we are currently under. The other addition that kind of ties right into this one would be because there was a request for a staffing position for a community economic development position, as well as a small operating budget for them, for that position. So it's just being recommended again, just with a tie to community economic development and just helping the community of Sooke recover from the COVID pandemic, is to fund the staffing costs and operating budget with the COVID reserve funds. And just a caveat of doing this is obviously cannot be a permanent solution, because at some point these COVID grant funds will run out. And so using it for staffing will mean at some point the staffing position needs to come in to be and be funded with property taxes similar to every other position. So, but just based on the circumstances and having this funding, it's a nice opportunity to fund this much needed position in the community and be able to use these grant funds for that for the next couple years here. The other addition would be the parks laborers. As we've seen right at the start of the pandemic, maintenance to parks has increased, and there's the requirement to keep up with the cleanliness needed at the parks that we are encouraging people to be out and use is definitely increased, and we don't see that waning off into 2021. If anything, probably getting even more people getting out into the parks, and so putting even more pressure on our park staff. So it is recommended to fund the parks labor increase, which was an additional ask with the COVID Safe Restart grant. Some other additions are, you will have noticed we have doubled the computer hardware budget, and that is to basically, that is one of the approved expenses would be computer and other electronic technology costs to improve interconnectivity and virtual communications. So this is what we're doing right now with doing this virtual council meeting. And so in order to ensure that council staff have the correct IT equipment needed in order to properly run these meetings and ensure the public has every opportunity to participate and engage in these meetings, it's just recommended to increase that budget. We haven't already increased it, went over the budget in 2020 with the stuff we needed to buy for 2020, but we're anticipating increased costs as well into 2021 to continue on ensuring staff, council have all the IT equipment that they need. As well included in there would be the funding of two major software pieces to our Tempest software. There's an e-commerce module which would allow the public to pay online. So that's a feature that would be really nice to activate and provide that ability for people to pay online to reduce the need to come to Municipal Hall to pay a small fee, for example. And as well, there's funds in here for the website refresh, and that would be to just update and modernize our website, make it more accessible by people in the community trying to access the various information and meetings, et cetera, links that we have on our website. There's a new addition for a bylaw vehicle. And this is based on the fact that it's anticipated the bylaw will need to be out in the community more in 2021, whether it's kind of encouraging people to practice safe distancing, et cetera, and just being out and as a presence in the community more, as people are either working from home more, meaning they're in their homes or in their home community more. And so we just anticipate, it's with only having one bylaw vehicle right now, it's just can make it problematic if both bylaw officers needed to be out in the community at the same time. They're not supposed to technically be riding in the same vehicle. So it's just recommended by staff that funding be put aside from the Safe Restart grant for an additional bylaw vehicle for our two bylaw officers. And this would alleviate the concern of bylaw was originally going to get the fire truck, the new fire truck that's being purchased in 2021, and get the old one. But it does have potential reliability issues, so perhaps there's a better use for that vehicle than a bylaw vehicle. And as well on that line, there's another parks vehicle being requested to be funded with the COVID Safe Restart grant. And this is due to, again, more parks workers are out in the community more often, and we didn't have enough vehicles for all of them to be out separately in vehicles. So which means we're taking out a more heavy duty vehicle out into the community more, and it's a lot more wear and tear on it. It's a lot more in gas, and just kind of foreseeing ahead, if council is supportive of hiring additional parks laborers, then we would just request a new vehicle for them to get around the community. And the final piece would be the casino revenue top up. And this is due because obviously due to COVID, one of the first things that closed down was, the casino. So the district has only received $60,000 of the budgeted $260,000 of casino revenue this year. And we're anticipating that the casino will hopefully open up maybe halfway through next year. We're not sure, obviously, nobody knows at this point. So just as a placeholder is to use some of the COVID Safe Restart grant funds to top up the casino reserve fund and to ensure that we have sufficient funding for future capital projects. So that's kind of the new addition to the presentation. Actually, I'll just go back. I just wanted to highlight as well. So that's 2021's additions to the budget for the COVID Safe Restart grant. There is expenses in 2022 and 2023 that are proposed to be funded with this grant as well. In 2022, it would be the Chamber of Commerce Service Agreement and the Community Economic Development position and budget, as well as parks laborers. And the addition of the RCMP officer is proposed to be funded with the COVID Safe Restart funds. And then in 2023, it is anticipated, again, just kind of on the vein of like at some point we need to bring these positions back into the regular budget, is to just fund the Community Economic Development position and their operating budget with the COVID Safe Restart funds, and have these funds available for potentially a bigger project that the community could undertake. I believe with taking these over the 3 years, they'll leave just under $2 million in that COVID Safe Restart grant that can be used for other projects potentially in the community, for things like providing services for vulnerable persons, et cetera. And so just kind of, I guess I'll just touch on the 3 new staffing positions. As I said, we're the Community Economic Development Officer and Parks Laborers, which is recommended to be funded with the COVID Safe Restart grant. So then the other new position would just be the addition of the Land Development Tech 1 position in this budget. And so just kind of taking this back from the last presentation, is the resolution council passed at the service level review meeting was that council directs staff to include the departmental request for consideration in the first draft of the 2021 budget. So that's what's included in there. So I have already touched on the Chamber of Commerce service agreement. So the various other department requests that are included in the budget would be, as I previously mentioned, the reduction of council travel budget of $10,000, again, just based on current year usage and forecasting what we will probably need for 2021. I believe this is a safe adjustment that council could make if you choose. The economic development is going to be funded through, is recommended to be funded for the COVID Safe Restart grant. There's a small increase to the HR department of $5,000 for occupational health and safety work. The communications budget and professional development and advertising budget. Some of those advertising budget, $9,000 of the advertising came from the corporate services department, and the remainder here, $18,000, is a new addition to the budget. As I just stated, $9,000 is being reallocated from the corporate services budget to the communications department budget. There is a request from the RCMP for $45,000 to fully fund the integrated units. And this would be including things like Crime Stoppers. It's kind of similar to the victim services funding from last year's budget, if council will recall, where we weren't funding the full municipal share historically, so they were just finding other ways to fund the balance. And so this is a similar request that our staff sergeant has presented to council for consideration this year. There's the addition of planning and development contractor. And as I said, this is to create a contractor budget to support the approving officer role transition. There's a $70,000 being requested by the operations department for a contractor, and this is requested to support the engineering role transition. And again, the directors are on the call here, and they can provide some further information to council if you've got some questions as we get through this presentation. The fire department has various minors ins and outs in their budget, which at the net of those results in a $66,000 increase. And the bulk of that would be the larger request would be $43,000 to increase the relief worker budget. And this will kind of help reduce the amount of firefighter vacation and overtime payouts. And there's $20,000 in there to start a fire master plan process, which would carry over into 2022. Not a direct tax impact because sewer is funded with the parcel tax, but sewer is the sewer operations team is requesting an additional $100,000 in their contractor and consultants budget, and that's just anticipating a lot more work to be undertaken now that the sewer plant is fully manned and a new manager has been hired. That we're anticipating further work and projects to be undertaken by the sewer if we're looking at potentially expanding the sewer once we hear back about the grant opportunity. So just making sure that there's sufficient funds available to hit the ground running should we hear that we are successful in the grant application. I won't list all these off. We can kind of just talk about them, whichever projects council would like more information on. But I just kind of wanted to highlight, like there's a few pages here, like there's a lot of projects underway, proposed to be underway in 2021, and trying to find the balance between internal projects like computers and stuff that the public wouldn't see, as well as, you know, projects out in the community, you know, like EV chargers, church road widening, designing, construction. You know, these kind of projects will be visible to the community and will make a big impact on people's daily lives, hopefully. And I believe, as I mentioned before, there's quite a number as well of design projects because now that council has supported the recommendations in the transportation master plan, the next step on a lot of those projects would be to do proper design work. And again, this would be to help ensure that the projects are shovel ready if grant opportunities come up, that we can have this initial pieces of work completed so that they'll be ready to be submitted with the grant applications. So, you know, a couple of the ones that, you know, will be happening sooner rather than later would be, oh, sorry, I'm clicking around here, would be, how do I go back? Sorry. Would be the Demamiel multi-sport court box, which is underway. The district has already confirmed that we've received the grant fundings for that. And a couple other projects that we have submitted grants for, which would be very exciting if we are successful in those, would be the bluff staircase replacement project and the Sooke potholes repairs. Both of those grants are 100% funded by the province, so it would be a great opportunity if Sooke was able to be successful in those grant applications to complete one or both of those projects, which have quite a big price tag with them. And just to kind of wrap it up here, I just wanted to kind of touch on the public consultation piece that's required as part of the 5-year financial plan process. And so basically prior to adopting the financial plan, a local government must undergo public consultation. The level of public consultation is not defined in the legislation. It may include opportunities for citizens to review, comment, and pose questions regarding the financial plan at a local government meeting. So I just want to kind of highlight some of what we've already kind of done this year to try and get public input and feedback on the budget. And so as council was aware, for the month of September, we had an online public engagement initiative called Citizen Budget, where we were seeking input from the community on what they wanted their future budgets to look like. You know, as with any communications and engagement, will always be room for improvement on that. But we're, you know, since I've come here, we've tried to improve on how we're engaging with the public and doing it more timely. And, you know, we're getting there. And the hiring of our communications coordinator here as well has been a huge wealth of knowledge and information on how to kind of get this information out to the public and get the public engaged in something that can sometimes be confusing to them. So we've done the citizen budget engagement. We did a random mail out to 100 residents, and I believe at the last count about 30 people had replied to that. So that was kind of nice to see. The first draft of the budget has been in the public, available to the public since November 5th. The amended draft of the budget's been available to the public since November 19th. You know, to my knowledge, no official public feedback or no correspondence has been received from the community on those first two drafts of the budget that they've seen there. And ongoing, we've had website postings. We're tweeting out information about your property taxes, where to go find information on our website about it, trying to encourage people to sign up for, you know, future news releases on, you know, any kind of correspondence that Sooke might be putting out there. And so as far as the next step for the budget goes, depending on obviously how today's meeting goes, but if council supports giving it first and second reading of the 5-year financial plan bylaw, then the next step would be we have an open house scheduled for Tuesday, December 8th, with 2 sessions, doing 2 MS Live Teams meetings so that we can record them and then post them on our YouTube channel after the fact as well. So there would be a morning session planned right now from 9:30 till 11 a.m. and then an evening session from 6:30 till 8 p.m. We're just thankfully one of the other municipalities has just done a similar engagement. And so we are watching back their videos and kind of taking some lessons learned from that on how to kind of potentially improve our presentations and engagement. And the idea being behind that is we would have obviously be accepting any kind of questions from the public, reaching out as much as possible to get the public to participate, and just even if they can't participate, submit questions that we would answer. And just if for some reason we don't get a lot of questions, we will be formulating kind of our own Q&As as well, just to kind of get more information out to the public. So that's kind of the next steps in the budget process would be to, if council is supportive of the first and second reading tonight, then we will proceed with the open house on December 8th and can report all of that information back to council at the next council meeting. So for now, I will leave it there and turn it over to council if you would like to have, if you have any questions or want further information about any.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gray. I think what would be helpful is if you could please stop sharing the screen, and that way I'll see who has questions, and if needed though, if a councillor references a slide, then I'll have to ask you to share it again, but this way at least I can see everybody. So now I cannot. Okay, there we go. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we'll go for questions. From members of council. Okay, Councillor McMath, then St. Pierre, then Beddoes.
2 questions through your worship to staff. So both bylaw and parks want vehicles, but neither of them want the older fire truck vehicle? Question mark?
No, it wasn't so much that they didn't want the other vehicles. I believe parks would take the other fire vehicle as well. They definitely have a shortage of vehicles right now, and it's just, it came up at one of the last council meetings that the fire truck may not be as reliable, obviously as a brand new vehicle. So it just kind of came up as an option to provide 2 different vehicles. If not, then yes, the option could be still for the fire truck to just get repurposed to another department.
Yeah. They're not emergency departments. Other question is, if someone in this community is a Luddite, how are they getting communicated to, and how are they communicating with us about the budget? Besides us.
But with, sorry, is a what? Sorry, I missed what you said there.
Someone who isn't computer savvy or owns a computer or anything like that, how are they supposed to get involved or educated about this?
So we do advertising in the Sooke News Mirror. So like there should be ads in the paper that they see that would encourage people to either, if they can't visit our website, then you know, Municipal Hall is open to members of the public to come in, and any member of the public can come in and request further information from staff. So I would guess that paper, you know, the newspaper would be.
So if they don't get the paper and they don't use a computer, if they don't get the Sooke News Mirror and they don't use the computer, how are they communicating with us?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know how that I would assume a majority of the public should be getting the Sooke News Mirror, I guess. And if they're not getting the paper, I'm not sure. Again, we did, you know, we can do other mail outs, but it's hard to know who to address specific communications or mail outs to, because mail outs can be expensive. So more than happy to do that. It would be hard for staff to identify who might not have access to the Sooke News Mirror or the technology to virtually participate.
My personal opinion right now is just maybe that we look at increasing the communications budget even more, or taking from council right now, so that rather than we just sending it to like a select few or randoms or this and that, it's just we do like a blanket letter contact or something like that, because I just think we're missing a huge portion of the community, not just in this, but in other stuff that we're going over as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's from Councillor McMath. An option that council could consider is just like a double-sided, whatever goes as a standard letter. So probably 2 double-sided pieces of paper, I think. Plus the staple is just mailed to everyone we would send our property tax bill to. You could do a bit of a printed newsletter, but it should just be to everybody, you know, and it could outline the budget and even some other things that we have on the go. So that's something that council has done in the past. There used to be newsletters that went out even quarterly, but for different reasons, that budget was actually cut back and there was more of a shift to online. But it is true that unless someone goes, not as, in most cases, the Sooke Mirror is delivered to every household, and that isn't always the case though. So someone would have to go and seek out the paper. So a direct mail advertise, you know, it is an option. We have done that in the past from either, you know, as I've mentioned, so something to think about. For now, though, I'll move on. So to Councillor St. Pierre and then Beddoes, and then I think I saw Bateman's hand.
Thank you, Mayor. I also had a question about the vehicle and the reliability issue, mostly having to do with, I understand that COVID funding was used to pay, or potentially could be allocated to pay for the vehicles, but that wouldn't actually reduce, and I just need an answer on this. This wouldn't actually result in a reduction in the, I think it was 6.61 property tax increase that we'd initially been looking at, because that wasn't an expense that had originally been in the budget, I believe. So first, I'd like to know whether or not that's actually the case. And then I guess I would be curious as to whether or not how bad the reliability issue is, because if it's so bad that the vehicle shouldn't be used, that's great. We should probably move on. But if the vehicles can be used, they probably should be used, and not necessarily purchasing new when the COVID funding could be used for other things.
Okay, back to Ms. Gray or to staff.
Yeah, through your worship. So just to confirm on the, yes, the bylaw and parks vehicles included in this draft of the budget are new additions. They weren't in the prior editions of the budget. So it was just an idea when we were trying to assess the potential needs and or uses of this COVID grant. It was an option that was presented, and thought we'll just present an option to council and see what council's take on that is. It's an option to do that. If not, then the plan was going to be just to repurpose the fire vehicle to bylaw. And so as far as the reliability goes, I could probably turn that over to Chief Mount, who I believe has spoken on this a couple times before, and maybe reconfirm. I believe the idea was that it just wasn't as safe for an emergency vehicle, but it should be safe for, you know, trying to get around the community. And if worse happens, it breaks down, it's not the end of the world. He's not responding to an emergency kind of situation when you're dealing with the bylaw or parks. But I see Chief Mount has put his camera on, so I'll let him speak a little more to it.
That is correct. Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, the original intention with the vehicle was to get an extended service life back when bylaw was part of community safety. Just excuse me, we're getting a page out here. And since then, of course, bylaw is under a different direction now. What the issues we had with the vehicle was to have it replaced 2 years ago when it got deferred and bumped. There's different demands for reliability and emergency use versus non-emergency use, and we're hoping to see 15 years of service life out of that vehicle. It is a 2009 unit, kind of unique, being a hybrid unit, a pioneer kind of hybrid electric vehicle that is not very fuel efficient, and we've kept good track and done our best job on trying to service it. Since 2010, we have about 43 service entries of kind of reliability issues. And the last kind of breakdown was in October when it failed to restart after a long weekend there. So there are some issues with it that don't justify it being reliable enough for, you know, regular emergency use, and that's why we've replaced it.
Could I get some further clarification?
Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm curious as to whether or not the maintenance costs on the vehicle warrant using it with bylaw or with parks. I mean, is this a lemon and we should just, you know, set it aside, I guess is the question. Otherwise, from what I can tell on the budget, we have an EV bike and a potentially not emergency, but potentially reliable vehicle for bylaw enforcement. So that seems reasonable. But I'm curious as to whether or not the vehicle itself is just not, with 43 entries, should we be liquidating this particular asset?
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, that would really be, I guess, up to the next director that is interested in having this vehicle and how important the reliability is for the specific use. We deemed it not reliable enough for emergency use, but when I was looking after bylaw at the time, and this is 2 years ago when we originally proposed it, and since then there's been a host of problems with it as well. You know, now it's different circumstances where, you know, the reliability of it not starting for a bylaw officer in the morning might be a delay of being out into the field versus, you know, an emergency response where it's critical there. So as far as our use in the fire department, it's not reliable enough.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can't hear you, Mayor.
Is that working?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I accidentally turned the volume down. On to Councillor Beddoes, and then over to Councillor Lajeunesse, and then logins, please.
Yeah, well, I think actually I was very impressed with those additions to use our COVID top-up money. Certainly not using all of it because we're still in the middle of this thing. I support picking up a couple extra vehicles. What a great way to increase our assets. And the other one is this chamber, you know, paying for them for a couple of years. I see them sort of on probation for a couple of years anyways. So I think that's a pretty good way to spend that money. We'll see what they can produce. And the same with the community economic development person. I'm really not sold on that position. But with this being, sorry, did somebody say something?
Councillor Bateman, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, I unfortunately I cannot mute myself here tonight. Anyways, I'll carry on. But with it being funded with this COVID top-up money,
and we were able to do that for a couple of years, it'd be a wonderful way to see if that position does in fact produce something. I sort of had my doubts in the beginning, but this would be a way to see. Can it be done? The Community Economic Development Officer, can we do that on a 2-year contract? Or would we be locked into funding that position from the taxpayers 2 years down the road? So that's a question for Ms. Gray.
Okay, was there anything else? Did you have like other questions? Just
yeah, I do have another one. Just a little comment. Is 2 years ago we voted ourselves some raises, and in the 3rd and 4th year we were going to look at some sort of thing to keep up. So not necessarily for us, but when the next group of councillors come in, that they're not, you know, trying to make up like we have to do for 10 years. And I don't see anything in the budget in that regard. So I'd be interested in hearing about that, because we did discuss it at length a couple of years ago. And I believe Councillor Bateman has mentioned today that, you know, we were supposed to strike a committee or something, but this is the time to do it when the budget's here. So that's my other query as well. So the first one is community economic development. Can it be done on a 2-year contract?
over to Ms. Gray.
Yeah, through your worship, and that's definitely could be an option. Right now, it's in the budget as a staff position, but you know, definitely that could be an option is to do a potential 2-year contract. I mean, I need to discuss with CAO McInnes there, as this was falling under his umbrella of responsibility. So just to confirm if that would meet his needs or not, but definitely an option could be to give a contract versus a permanent staffing position. And as far as, I'm just trying to look through my little pile of goodies here, the council remuneration, I believe council passed a resolution saying that they would form a, like Mr. Bateman said, or Council Bateman said, form a committee and to determine any future increases after the first increase was voted upon. I'm just sorry, flipping through my pages here. I know I had seen that recently. So there was, I believe, a council resolution from a couple years ago that discussed future increases and how that council would could direct staff to undertake this process. But confirming there is no money in the budget for projected council increases.
No, and I don't think Councillor Beddoes was intending for an increase to come in to 2021. It would be more, which would make sense why it's not in the budget, but potentially a citizen advisory committee of sorts that would provide recommendations that may potentially kick in at the start of the next term. So
Yeah,
I think that's the rationale.
whatever. The thing is, my concern was when we first were elected into office, we had 10 years of trying to make up because previous councils would not commit to anything, and the dollar value of what we do was eroded. And now we're sort of in that position again. We got up to a starting point, which was equivalent to what we would have been getting 12 years ago. And now we are here again. And we're going to basically leave it to the next council. And I'm not entirely happy with that personally. No, I'm looking for my colleagues to comment on this here. Maybe it's just me. It's not a deal breaker with me. But that was sort of the way we were going, and we're trying to attract younger people and people that have to work, and you know, we're stopped again. So just it's budget time, so I thought that would be an opportune time to discuss it.
Yeah, well, we can look at doing a motion arising following as we get through budget, because this wouldn't impact the 2021. There would be a need to potentially form said committee and to give that direction to staff. So we can do a motion arising to follow, and I'll turn to you at that time. Councillor Lajan, or pardon me, Councillor Bateman, you're next.
Okay. Thank you. I seem to have a 2-second lag here. So first of all, wonderful that we're working this year with a 3.31% increase, as opposed to last year when we were trying to cut from 6%, 6.5%. So thank you, and great news about the Safe Restart funding. Through you to Ms. Gray, I was curious that last year in your capital plan, you had a category under funding sources that stated taxes. And this year, I don't see that. Was there a reason you dropped that out?
That was partly used to, with having the COVID Safe Restart funds, allowing us to use some other funds to fund the capital projects that were funded by property tax, is how that number, I believe it was $70,000 in the first draft of the 2021 to 2025 five-year financial plan. And just with the ability to reallocate some of the other operating expenses to be funded with the COVID grant funds, has enabled us to not have to use any property taxes to fund the capital projects for the 2021 budget.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. Let's see. You know, I'm increasingly confused. I don't know if our Director of Parks is with us tonight, but I'm confused about this bluff staircase, and I know it's coming from grant funding. However, last year we were looking at $150,000 expense to rebuild those stairs. And I know this, we're looking at a more ambitious undertaking with some public parking spaces being created. But you know, people in the area have asked me, $572,000 is a lot of money. How exactly will that be spent? Can someone answer that? Is this an appropriate time for that question?
Sure, through your worship. I'll turn that over to Mr. Carter, who can speak a little bit more about the project and the increase in the budget that was submitted for the grant application.
Thanks, Ms. Gray. Through your worship, Councillor Bateman. So for the plus $500,000 expense for the bluff staircase, we wanted to ensure that it was within all the grant requirements. When you're going in, they require you to have substantial contingencies put into your project to ensure that the funding will actually be met and that we're not looking at any substantial overruns. In alignment with the requirements for the grant, we want to possibly increase the width of the staircase as well to align with sort of the COVID protocols and improving the access. And it did include the parking, as you have indicated as well. So realistically, your staircase might be around a $250,000, $300,000 project. You throw the parking in there and contingency, and that will bring you up to your total you have in front of you.
Okay, good answers. Thank you. Sewer parcel tax. Is that I see it goes up maybe $50,000 each year in the 5-year plan. Is that at a fixed rate, the sewer parcel tax? Educate me once more. A fruitless exercise, but give it a go.
Through your worship. So the sewer parcel tax, the increase in the budget you see there is just based on growth. New additions to the sewer service area. So it's just a high level estimate of how many new properties we believe would be added to the sewer service area in 2021, etc. And that's reflected in the additional revenue increases. The fee is set at $653 per household.
Okay.
For till 2025.
All right. Back to the e-bike. Okay, so I'm really interested in this. Now, the e-bike is being funded out of the Carbon Tax Rebate Reserve Fund, which is the one source of funding for the Climate Action Committee. I'm just curious as to why that hasn't come out of the Safe Restart monies.
Through your worship, no, it's an option. I was just historically had been recommended to be funded with the climate action rebate. It could be potentially fall under the COVID safe restart. It would be a low risk. The bike isn't, you know, it's only $3,500. So if it did get denied for some reason, it would be a low risk for the operating budget just to absorb that cost if that was the case. So yeah, it was just put in because historically that's how it was recommended it was going to be funded. But if council would like to use the COVID restart funding instead of the climate action, that can be an option for sure.
Yeah, well, I mentioned that just given that Climate Action Committee, and this is up to Councillor St. Pierre to discuss further, but it's a big chunk out of their limited funding. And I guess finally, it was interesting to note looking at the 5-year capital plan and how sewer expansion is set to happen in 2022 and 2023. And then in 2025, there is a huge outlay to effectively complete the Throop connector bypass. And is that just a matter of bookkeeping, or is that in fact, particularly with the transportation piece, is that sort of a fixed date you'd like to achieve that? I think you're spending, what was it, $15 million in 2025.
Correct. Through your worship, I see Mr. Carter's turned his camera on, so I'll turn over to him in 1 second here. But yeah, this was Mr. Carter was working hard on trying to be realistic with what we could try and implement in the transportation master plan, and knowing that those were some of the more expensive projects. And you know, for a community like Sooke, who doesn't have millions and millions in a reserve fund to use for just to go out and build these tomorrow, it gives us opportunities to do the pre-work involved, to get all the designs ready, as I stated before, and then be able to jump on any grant option or opportunity that would develop over the next few years. So I believe it's a combo of a bit of the financing of it, as well as just trying to be realistic on how much could get accomplished within that 5 years. But I can let Mr. Carter kind of speak a little bit more about it, because I know he's passionate about roads.
Thanks, Ms. Gray. Through your worship, Councillor Bateman, Ms. Gray's hit it right on the mark. Essentially, they are loaded into your 5-year financial plan near the tail end of it. We are engaging in all the substantial designs going through the next year so that we can have these projects shelf ready. And then depending on the logistics as well as the grant opportunities that come up, we may very well adjust those for council's consideration in future financial plans, bringing them forward as required. So that's sort of where we're at with that.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I will just note, I would agree with Councillor McMath that we need to bump up the communications budget. A regular Canada Post remains a remarkable and underutilized delivery service, and everyone gets it. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. So over to Councillor Lajeunesse, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, just can't see you.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so a couple of questions. One, I'm glad that we're getting everything ready to concentrate on the transportation master plan, because I think that's something that's important. It's been something that's been lacking in Sooke for years. I was curious about the $700K for the Drennan Charters intersection. They don't intersect. So I just wanted to be on what that was about. The other question is about the 2 vehicles for $50K each. I was just wondering what type of vehicles are we looking at here, because I have 2 pretty decent vehicles in my yard, and together they're not worth $50K. So there's that. And the other thing I just wanted to note is that we're looking at, if we're looking at a 3.31% increase this year, that means next year's 7.3. and 2023 is 7.5. Is that right?
Okay, so is there the two questions then is on the vehicle types, the intersection, and then on the projected taxes, just so that staff can gear up to answer the questions. That's why I'm trying to pull them all out from members of council.
Yeah.
Okay, was there anything else, Councillor Lajeunesse? Mr. Carter
No,
first.
maybe a follow-up, but the Drennan charters, I'm just curious as to what that was about. Is that intersections at Drennan and Highway 14 and then at Charters and Highway 14?
Okay, so we'll have Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter is ready now, so we'll have him answer that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks to your worship, to Councillor Lajeunesse. Both those intersections, the Drennan at Highway 14 and the Charters, we've slated them into the 2021 budget. They are a requirement that's based on the transportation impact analysis that was done for the Drennan and Charters BC housing developments. So that is the substantial cost estimate right now as is for those two projects. That is for the signalization of Charters as well as the right in, right out at Drennan. In alignment with those two projects, I've been in contact with the Ministry of Transportation in terms of the timing on those. We've brought forward the budget for those projects substantially to be completed. We may just be engaging in final design aspects of those projects with consultation with the landowners around. But what our ultimate goal is, and what needs to be done in unison, is those projects ultimately, they need to be completed in alignment with certain aspects of the transportation master plan. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at staging them. If we were just completing the design on them this year and to possibly carry over the funds and implement them in alignment in 2022 or 2023, with the required Throop Road connector, because ultimately what those intersection upgrades are going to do, they're control measures that are required for the Drennan and Charters intersections, and they will facilitate those two developments. But ultimately they will add slight congestion to the highway by signalizing it, and it's not the intent that we want to do that. Ultimately, they have to be completed in alignment with that Throop Road connector. So I've been in discussion with the ministry, and we're looking at bringing the designs forward and possibly delaying those projects so they can be done in unison with the connector projects once they're designed. And ultimately, they will reduce the congestion on the highway. What we don't want to do is have a bad perception develop saying, yes, we've facilitated these two developments, but then we've caused another problem at the same time. So we're trying to bring forward the most strategic approach on those intersections. And in terms of a roundabout, which was mentioned at one of the last meetings for the Charters intersection, we could and we would be looking for further council direction to explore that. But ultimately, the requirement was for control of that intersection, which is to particularly facilitate those two developments. I do understand there's a roundabout first policy and we can explore that, but I could tell you the outcomes of going into a preliminary design for a roundabout there. If a typical roundabout costs you $1 to $2 million, a roundabout at that intersection would probably cost you in the $3 to $4 million range because of the fact of the grades that are associated there. There would also be substantial property acquisitions because there's not enough room to put one in there. So ultimately, the best option is to signalize Charters, but we want to try and do it strategically in unison with other aspects of the transportation master plan, so it sort of meets our needs for decreasing the congestion and doesn't sort of give us an interim problem until we can get the other projects completed.
Thank you, Mr.
Right.
Carter.
Okay, thanks.
And then to Ms. Gray for Councillor's other question.
Sure, through your worship. So as far as the cost for the two vehicles, that was just based on the cost of the last Parks truck that was purchased. They purchased a Ford half-ton extended cab pickup truck, and before taxes and levies, etc., it was $39,322. And this was a couple years ago, so just anticipating they would like a similar type of vehicle and slightly increased costs. And as far as for the bylaw vehicle, whether the whole amount is required or not, I don't know if they would, I don't believe they would need the same like a half-ton pickup truck per se, but with a budget of $50,000, there could be the option of looking at potentially a hybrid vehicle, electric vehicles, like some of the more expensive vehicles that are better for the environment. And as well, there is the cost associated with installing lights, etc. And on the bylaw vehicle would require lights and stuff. So that would be kind of the idea for where the same amount was proposed for both vehicles. And that doesn't mean obviously that we would need to spend all of that. It was just a high level estimate of what those could cost. And then for the future property tax increases, if everything was passed as is and next year's budget cycle, nothing was changed, then next year's property tax increase for 2022 would be 4.86%. But what happens every year with the budget is that's why we review it every year, is to determine what is changed from the prior year, what other inputs need to come into it. What is council's desire for this year? Do you want to increase reserve fund balances and fund more things with property taxes, or would you rather use the reserve funds and keep the property taxes at a lower rate? So this will kind of get looked at every year, and as the years are going on here, we'll have a more fulsome, kind of well thought out 5-year financial plan now that we have these recommendations from the Parks, Trails, and Transportation Master Plan. So we can do better long-term visioning and budgeting. So that's this is kind of the first step of it. Yeah, so that's the 4.86 in 2022 is the result of bringing in a couple of the COVID expenses into the budget. And then as well as trying to let the reserve funds fill up again to be used for future years' capital projects. But as happens every year, this can be debated by council, and I can pretty much guarantee that 4.86 would be a different number next year.
Okay. Councillor Logans, did you have any questions to ask of staff?
I do, thank you. I have a few questions and comments, but I did want to first say thank you so much, Ms. Gray, and to staff for coming forward with this new budget. I know that was a lot of extra work that we put on you, but I really appreciate it. I think it's a lot easier for everyone to look at now. A couple of notes. In terms of Canada Post and sending mail outs, it's actually really cheap to do that, surprisingly, to send things out to little mail outs. The only problem is that they get shoved into the box along with anything else that's a mail out, so people might miss them if they're like between a couple of flyers, but it is a really cost-effective way to send out information. The fire truck that had 43 entries, we were actually provided each of those entries in a council meeting. Hopefully you can all remember and go back on your notes on that, but it didn't seem at that time that any of them were very drastic or that it was a lemon. I remember that question came up at that time too, but we decided that it wasn't. So it's interesting that this is coming up again. I think that's why we have so many questions about it. I think I totally agree with Councillor Beddoes and had the exact same thought about the community economic development position in terms of its length. I think this is a good way to test out the position, and I do wonder if there's any way to do like a term contract that would fit with the funding that we currently have, and then just have that extend based on either grant funding or an extension if we're able to fit that into the budget in future years. The questions that I have, let me just make sure that's all my comments. Yeah. Yes, I wanted to hear from the directors about the transition contractor funding, if I may, and just how that might help them and affect each of those departments.
So,
Oops.
Through your worship to Councillor Loggins. So for the engineering consultant, currently we have a very fortunate opportunity utilizing a consultant that has many years of experience, not only with the community, but working as a professional engineer. We're also in the process of restructuring sort of engineering department and our processes in terms of how we're actually going about subdivision development processes with design reviews and working in conjunction with planning and development and the land development positions. Essentially, we're going to be backfilling one of our existing engineering positions. That position will not be hired out until early January, hopefully. And it is absolutely instrumental in the training and the consultant working with our two tech positions in order to deliver like the service that we're looking for and pushing forward subdivision approvals, application processes, as well as the substantial capital projects that we're bringing forward for council consideration and some of the designs going forward for next year.
So that sounds to me like you're looking for a way to hire someone into the organization and start them off as a contractor.
Through your worship, no, to Councillor Logan's, it is, we are utilizing this service approximately 1 day a week, and they're, like I said, providing instrumental training to both of our technologist positions, one right now, and for the second one going through January when they come on, and that'll hopefully continue for 6 months to a year while we can utilize this position.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question I have is in regards to the 2 additional vehicles as well. I was hoping to hear from the directors on how, like, actually what they think, and does anyone want to fight over this quote unquote potential lemon or what? But it'd be good to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. Through your worship to Councillor Logan's, I have quite a bit of experience running some large-scale fleets in the private industry as well as in municipalities. Typically, you don't want to keep a vehicle in a municipal fleet for more than 10 years. 15 years is the absolute limit. From what I've heard about this particular vehicle, it's the older hybrid technology that has experienced a lot of issues. I believe you are, by keeping this vehicle in fleet and not liquidating it, you're going to push those issues along the line, and you're going to experience some substantial maintenance costs. And the 10 to 15 year mark is typically, depending on how the vehicle is utilized, you're going to start experiencing some more costly maintenance fees and to do with the drivetrain, suspension, etc. My suggestion would be to liquidate the vehicle and get rid of it. Ultimately, you're most likely dealing with a red vehicle as well, that if you want it to be consistent with your fleet, it would probably go white if it was Parks and to the gray blue if it was Bylaw, and you'd have another substantial cost of repainting it unless you want to be running an older red vehicle out with your Bylaw or your Parks fleet.
Thank you. And I have one more question to our fire chief. About the overtime for the firefighters, because there was a $40,000 request to cover that and minimize the overtime. Do you know how much the overtime is sitting at for the past year?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Logan's. The increase in the relief worker budget is really the direct result of reverting back to an historical amount. In the last year, we actually had brought it back down with anticipation of bringing in another firefighter due to providing a cost-neutral analysis. That cost-neutral analysis was in an effort to reduce overtime further. COVID has had a significant impact on the fire department, and we are investigating right now what is eligible as far as an expense to support us further. And overtime will continue to climb unless we actually look at where the situation is at the fire department right now. We put in $25,000 in the 2021 budget as where we think overtime would sit based upon the last kind of analysis that we've been doing. One of the things that we're kind of concerned about right now, where we're waving a yellow caution flag, is due to COVID, we haven't been able to run another recruitment program. And we also have several leaves of absences. And in the last couple of years, I've lost 10 experienced members due to moving out of the community and other job-related things. Very similar to like a term position contract related type of item. It's new to us right now, and actually tomorrow, being part of the Fire Chiefs Association, I'm going to be learning more about what other municipalities have as eligible expenses and are experiencing the same thing. So to really help you understand where the relief worker budget is, it's going back to where it was, because we really were moving the money back into the salaries component with an expectation of not having a relief worker utilized as much in 2020. And we're going back to where we were before in 2019 in this 2021 budget by bringing relief workers back in to help us have firefighters take the time off at the beginning of the year throughout the year. And I hope that answers you without confusing you too much.
I think it definitely adds further confusion. So to clarify, your current estimate is at 25,000 and you're asking for an additional 40,000, or is it 40,000 total, or am I totally off?
I think you're a bit off through the chair. Is I'm bringing the relief worker budget back to where it should be. And we reduced it in 2020 with an expectation.
Yes, sorry to interrupt, Chief, but I understand your theory behind it, but I want to talk numbers, because that's the part where I'm getting lost here.
So the relief worker budget is going back to a level based upon really an actual from this year and where we had it before without another firefighter in place.
Okay, do you know what the actual was this year? I can take a peek.
Yeah,
I haven't got enough. I don't have enough screens.
Yeah, just give me a second here. I'm looking at it.
No problem.
Right now.
While you're looking for that, Ms. Machada, I thought I saw your hand up, so I thought I'll just go to you while.
Thank you, Your Worship, but I think Mr. Carter addressed the questions about the vehicles.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go back to the chief then.
So I have here for a actual for 2020, it is at, as of the last one I had here for month ending in November, at 39,522, and I am using a relief worker considerably here before the end of the year as well, just because of members taking vacation as well.
So then to get it back to the amount that you wanted to get it to, is it an additional 40,000 that you're asking on top of the 25?
I would say it's reverting back to where it used to be because we don't have that money in the salaries budget anymore.
Okay, but I guess what I'm asking is the amount you're asking for $70,000 or is it $40,000?
The amount in the budget here for 2021, just let me pull that figure up here.
Ms. Gray, do you have that handy?
61. I have it at 61,000 is the total. So it's going up from like 15,000 back to 61,000. And, you know, the trend with the relief worker budget, when I started here back in 2016, it was, you know, close to $200,000. And it's historic.
Right, but then we changed the system completely at your request.
That you'll be confusing the relief worker line item with the paid on call.
Okay.
Incentive program.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the relief workers are there to replace career members that aren't on shift.
For vacation and overtime. Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you. And Ms. Gray, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, through your worship, just to kind of clarify what Chief Mount's saying, or add to it, I guess, is the ask that is the relief worker budget is requested to increase $43,000 over. The $25,000 that he's talking about for overtime is just, it used to be in the salaries budget, so we're just now separately identifying it on this version of the budget. So it was in the number behind the scenes, it just wasn't identified separately. So that's, it's not, the 25,000 is an addition to the budget, it's just now showing it as a separate line from the salary. So the addition piece is the $43,000, and that kind of went back to when I had started here. I think there was just a misunderstanding on the potential reduction or the increase of the paid on call model and how that would tie into the reduction of the relief worker budget. And that was kind of based on potentially having additional permanent firefighters on staff, which isn't occurring under, in 2021 as was initially thought might happen. So that's why there's an ask to increase that budget, because there isn't going to be the staffing available to fill those positions so that the permanent firefighters can take their vacations, etc.
Right. Okay. Thank you both very much for helping me through that. The only other comment I have is that I'm not making a motion now, so we can have further discussion, but I was hoping that council tonight would move first and second reading and then wait for all of the other pieces to go through the feedback system that Ms. Gray is putting together with the open houses. And then we can further discuss all of the other details and see how they fit in. But I'm really pleased with what's happening, and that's all that I have. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Logans. In terms of questions from myself, I don't have any. They've either been addressed by council or it's through the staff report. Now that we know who the Minister of Affairs, now that the cabinet is in place, I think this is where we've sort of asked, myself and other elected about the COVID recovery fund. Is there a guidebook? Is this eligible or that eligible? But without having the minister in place, I think it was a case of waiting for that to be established, and then this will come through follow-up. But there is a word of caution to use the COVID funds as they are outlined. There is annual auditing required. The gas tax funding model itself will be under review, as well as local government finance. So the last thing you want is to have local governments not use the funds properly, because it'll damage just the future and what that looks like for local governments. And we'll also see with the NDP and their new mandate letters, just how things unfold. May be the case for more grant opportunities or further advocacy accordingly. So I'll leave it at that, but I am the same mind as Councillor Logans of moving through first and second reading. So I'm just trying to think of logistically the best way to move through this. There are a couple of hands up. So I think I'll see first if there's any questions, any outstanding questions, and then if someone wants to put a resolution forward, we'll go through that and then have comment and debate on that item unfold as it does. But I want to restrict sort of my next round here to questions, because there's no motion on the floor. So I just want to see if there's any questions. So I saw Councillor St. Pierre, and then I believe Councillor McMath has her hand up as well. Questions first. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
This should be relatively quick. I'm just curious about the vault. I don't always have a perfect recollection, but I believe that the vault was removed from the prior budget with consideration that the building that we're in might not be sufficient to our future needs, and that spending on the vault as a piece of infrastructure in a building that we might not necessarily be able to stay in wasn't necessarily the best way to go, and that's why it was removed. I was wondering if that could be commented on through your worship to staff.
Okay, did you just have the one question, Councillor St. Pierre? Okay, so is that a question for finance or from maybe our corporate officer? I think it's a corporate office expense. Ms. Gray, I'll let you decide there.
Yeah, through your worship, I see that Ms. Mushada has put her camera on there, so I'll let her speak to that, to the vault.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Mushada.
Thank you. Yes, we did determine that the vault could be removed and moved to a different location. Right now, it is a risk item that you know, that we do need to address, as all of our records are vulnerable to both water damage and fire damage at this point in time. But we were assured that the vault could be removed and
Okay, there's just a bit of tapping, and Ms. Machado, you cut out there, but just to confirm, the vault is for safekeeping of records, and my understanding is we removed it once COVID hit, and we were looking to staff to direct us, given the need to safe practice, were they able to progress this project or not? And it just unfolded that it was not one that could be accomplished in the year, so I'm not surprised to see it return here. But if that's different from staff's take on why it was removed and come back, please clarify.
Through your worship, no, that's correct. It was solely removed as part of the amended budget process to get the property tax increase for 2020 reduced, because that freed up some of the reserve funds that were able to be used for other projects that were previously being funded by property taxes. And then just the opportunity was to bring it back to council for consideration again in 2021 here.
Okay, thank you. Over to Councillor McMath.
Two questions. First one, through your worship, to Chief. Last year, I had asked about the Fire Association. I wanted to see what their current bank was at, and if we had an agreement through them with the District of Sooke, and then also was looking to see the contribution lowered as we were switching to a paid on-call system. Do you have any updates for me? Us?
You're through the chair to Councillor McMath. The update I have for you is actually we'll be meeting with the CAO and the executive of the association in the coming week, and we'll be discussing a bit about the retention piece, which is that stipend portion in the budget that's still there. My discussions with the Firefighter Association as well is that if there's a change in that stipend with the retention, likely the fire department administration will be needing to take on that retention piece a little bit more.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said because Councillor Bateman was creaking on his chair.
Sorry, I'll repeat that. My discussions with the Firefighter Association's executive was that if there's reduction in the retention piece with their stipend model, that likely the administration of the fire department will need to be taking on more of those responsibilities. So we do expect some sort of change in that stipend model in the coming year. And with further kind of review on it when we're done the paid on call implementation model as well, when it comes to its final year. So really to summarize is I'll have more information after the meeting with an expectation that there's likely going to be a change, and that change will really result in the fire department dealing with more retention requirements, which would be a reflection in the budget.
So I'd asked for an update from February of last year and haven't heard back anything. So I'm just kind of, last year I asked for an update before third reading last year. So it just, when can we expect to have an answer on what it's going to look like?
Through the chair to Councillor McMath, I recall the association provided a response and an email on what they're allowed to provide back as information. I'll have to dig that up and make sure that you are copied in on it. But perhaps CEO McInnes can confirm that that response was provided to us, and it laid out what they can and cannot report on.
Because if it's justified, then I'm happy to have it. It's just we can't see what's going on, and we can't see what's being retained, and we can't see how it's being used. And every other association is basically we have an agreement with, and they're required to provide those things. And especially if we're now going through the process of reviewing all those agreements, but it's not the same across the board. It's just, it's difficult to approve something when we don't know how it's being used. It's not to say that it's not being used appropriately at all. It's just, we're giving $35,000 a year, and I don't see how it's being used yet. So regardless of what they would like to share or prefer to share, it's time to share.
Understood. We'll have an update for you through the chair, in the coming weeks.
Thank
I'll
you.
turn to Mr. McInnes. Did you have anything to add to what the chief has said?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, we do have a meeting set for December 8th. And part of this fund is to maintain assets that the Volunteer Association takes care of on behalf of the organization. Two of those assets are the Fireman's Lounge and the weight room that's in the annex. We are meeting specifically on how that money is used and whether, you know, what the impact of that is if the district takes on those responsibilities again. I just need to have a better understanding of how this is used as a recruitment tool for our volunteers, because that is, it's a really important tool to maintain, you know, our goal of having upwards of 40 volunteers on a year-round basis. So we will have a better understanding. I will have a better understanding of how we use that as a recruitment tool, and I certainly will report back to council. And we can do that before third reading of the budget, and certainly before we have our planned adoption of the budget in early January.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then my last question was, through your worship, to staff in regards to the vault. Instead of paying like the $70,000 for the vault, just can you educate me on why we couldn't hire like a position to digitize all those records instead?
So over to Ms. Mushata, please.
Yep. They are records that can't be digitized. I mean, we have digital copies of them, but we are required to keep our original bylaws, agreements, yeah, our minutes, all of those things are required for retention for all of history until something changes in the digital world. And we also do use that for storage of our financial payments. I mean, like all of our
Letters of credit.
yeah, letters of credit and things like that are all also in that area that are unsecure to smoke and fire.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from members of council? Questions? Councillor St. Pierre?
Seeing no questions, I was just going to move the resolution.
Okay, so that is that council give first and second reading to the bylaw cited as 5-year financial plan, bylaw number 799, 2020. That's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Logans, I believe. I just want to, I know that staff, you have provided this to us, but can you please remind me as to when you expect there to be like the full sort of public input session? I know you have the open houses planned, but when would a public input session be scheduled?
Through your worship, so that is scheduled to occur at the December 14th council meeting, I believe, is to get the feedback from the open house on December 8th and present that to council with the public input portion at to get third reading at December 14th meeting. Yeah.
Okay, so now we do have a live motion, so I'll look for speakers specifically on the motion. So Councillor McMath?
Do we need an addition to help Ms. Gray with the communication piece and like what that looks like?
It's a good question. Thank you. In terms of should council wish to increase that, I guess part of it is understanding is by how much, so that, you know, and then what that tax impact would be, depending on the amount, or would staff look to shift it from another area?
Could we not just pull it from like our own budget? More, it's like the timeline too as well.
Yeah, like our council contingency. I'm not sure. I don't remember how much is in it. Ms. Gray?
The council contingency balance is just over $32,000 as of today.
But what would it be for
Position.
what is it for 2021?
Oh, 2021 would be $80,000.
Okay, so then an option, Councillor McMath, then is that it could just remain as council contingency as that amount, and then as we get sort of more information, okay, and that would be a question that perhaps we could bring to the next meeting on this, is if we mailed out to every household in Sooke, what would that cost? Because then we could just make a resolution to shift that from contingency. It wouldn't change the budget, and then we could look at, okay, if it's once or twice or say 3 times or 4 even, then if we wanted to replenish our council contingent, like one or the other, we could establish that. But I think here we could, that would be a good question to have answered for the 14th.
Correct.
Does that help, Councillor McMath?
Is that going to be enough time to get that information and then send out and then get responses from the community? Is that going to give you enough time for like the final reading?
Okay, that's where I misunderstood you. So I was thinking of next year doing
Oh yeah, no.
more mail-outs. Okay, so if you wanted something to go out now, then I
Yeah.
think it would be a follow-up business arising motion that I'll look to, where then perhaps Mr. McInnes and our staff could just think about this in the meantime, is if we're drawing from 2020 council contingency, we could resolve and make a motion tonight, and then it would be for staff to put something together to mail out. They'll need to move on this quickly before the holiday mail hits. So we could get, that would be more of a follow-up motion. I wouldn't put it into this one because we're kind of looking at 2021 ahead in that particular budget. So this would be more a motion, like a business arising motion that we would want to make after this.
Okay.
Okay. So anything on the motion on first or second? Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm glad that Councillor McMath brought up the communication piece because there were concerns in terms of our equipment, the audio feedback, and so on and so forth. And I'm wondering if we need another motion arising to actually deal with it, because at this point, I know that many of us are looking for some improvements in terms of the experience and how easy it is for everyone to actually access these meetings. We didn't actually get any details, which I was hoping to get in the budget proposal, in terms of what was going to be happening with those monies. I understand at this point in time that this is not necessarily what I support the budget as it stands. I would like to know whether or not council is going to have an opportunity to provide feedback in terms of their experiences and what we'd like to see happen and how that's going to happen. And do we need a motion arising to make that happen, or can we simply expect staff to pick up on that?
So that process has started. So our IT staff, following last week's meeting, has sent out an email looking for more information to how to make your sort of engagement better. I also took that as an opportunity to say, here's what I have noticed in the opportunity that I have been at home when we had that hybrid, what I thought would be helpful for the viewing public. So that is information I've passed on to our IT. I would suggest that you do that as well, because I think there is ways to improve it with what's available, but I think those details will come out later. So what I'm hoping staff will do before you make any changes in chambers is I would like you to bring your ideas forward to council first, just so we can say yes or no, or that would work, or wait a second, there's this. Because an example would be the large TV monitors that were put in. We still can't read them that well. So there's 3, but depending on where you're sitting and how they're angled, sometimes it's still difficult to see the text. So there would be there's been a suggestion of different monitors even at each workstation instead of a large screen out in chambers. So that would, though, depending on how high it was, potentially block the visibility of the public to the sitting councillor. So if you have a big screen in front of your face, they're not going to be able to see you. So that's why I think we just need to take, before any changes are made, please just talk to us first. So I'd like to make that request of staff. But in the meantime, send your feedback through or answer the email. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? Any comments? Anything further on the motion? I'm not seeing any. Councillor McMath, your hand is still raised on Teams, but you're answered. Okay. Or would you like to speak further? No. Okay. And I see Councillor Bateman is good, Councillor Logan, St. Pierre. I can't see Councillor Lajeunesse or Councillor Beddoes, so I'm assuming that you're fine, but I'd like you to turn them on so I can do a vote, please, now that all the questions and comments have been completed.
My camera's on.
Okay, I'm only just seeing you on screen now. Okay, and Councillor Beddoes, I can't see you either, so maybe just just say aye when I call the question, please. Okay, so all those in, Ms. Muschetta?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to mention, I believe it's because it's the people who spoke last, their cameras are staying visible most recently. So if Councillor Beddoes says something, his camera should appear on screen.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Okay, so
I don't see myself yet, but
no, Ms. Gray, can you turn your camera off, because
yeah,
now
there you go.
that'll work.
I'll drink to that.
Oh, you
Okay.
kicked me off.
Yeah, so Councillor Logan's should reappear now.
I'm trying. Hello.
There you are. Okay, there's Councillor Logan's. Okay, so we're back to all of council then. Okay, good. We're figuring this out. Okay, so we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please. Okay, gotcha. Anyone opposed? Well, that would be just me, so no, that carries unanimously. So thank you very much, Council, for your discussion and your questions, and thank you, staff, for all the work that you've done in bringing this forward to us and for having all those answers for us. There are a few outstanding items that we'll look for you to address in the coming weeks. So now there's just, I sort of took a few notes and I might have missed one, but I want to ask staff as a follow-up in terms of what a mail-out cost would be for Sooke, because, and whether or not, or ideally council would like to see something go out to obtain some feedback, or at least let the public know what's happening coming this December 14th. So perhaps Mr. McInnes, if you have a number in mind, or if you can advise us on us meeting this challenge. And you're muted, sir.
So yes, we can certainly get a price and try and crystal ball the time that it'll take to get some information out and provide enough time to get feedback back. It'll certainly it'll impact our schedule as we have it now, so we won't be able to do third reading on December 14th, because that certainly will not give us enough time to get information out and get feedback back. So it's going to push our schedule back. So council likely would not see the budget again for third reading until sometime in the new year. And I just want to sort of give a little bit of our strategy that we've been trying to employ and started this year, is we really want to get that citizen input a lot earlier in the budget process. So that's why we did the citizen budget this year. We really want to try and get that feedback at the same time that we're having the service level review with council, because really I would like to have that debate with, or that discussion with our community. What are the services that you most want to see, and where are the increases or decreases, or those things that you think we should stop doing, or those programs and services that we're not doing now that you think we should start doing? We would love to have that as part of the discussion that informs the first draft of the budget that comes to council for consideration. So just a little information of where we're going with this, but we really want to get the engagement earlier in the process. The community charter requires us to do the engagement after second reading, before third reading, and we'll always have to do that. But that we're looking at as more of a reporting back piece. If we can get the citizen input much further earlier in the process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McInnes. I'll turn to Councillor McMath then and see if she would like to make a motion or ask anything further. It's sort of out, but I did ask Mr. McInnes to speak on this, so I'm sure you might want to answer something back.
Not just with the budget, but with everything else that's coming forward. So then do I need to make a blanket motion that we send out mail regarding everything that's coming forward? Or like, it's not just the budget that I'm concerned about either. It's about a series of like bylaws and things that they're coming forward. So what's the ideal tool here? Because I don't know how much it's going to cost us. I don't have that estimate. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know when I need to put it forward.
Okay, Councillor Logans?
Oh, sorry, just trying to unmute. Are we not having a discussion about this at an upcoming meeting?
We have a communications workshop plan, so this is, and then there'll be a communications plan presented to council. So this is coming. I was sort of viewed it as a follow-up to see if there was an item we wanted to send out specific to this budget, but hearing that it's going to, and this is where council can decide if that is important. Sorry, my whole screen froze.
Same.
If it's important to have feedback on just the budget, then it would delay our ability to have third reading, and that ultimately is for council to decide. If it's to send items out on all the different matters that are occurring, then that would be part of the communications plan in general. So that will come at a later date. If for this, what I'm hearing from staff, yes, they could do that. They could get us costs, but it would push third reading into the new year, so the timeline changes. So that is the decision we would want to make potentially now. Is that Councillor Logans?
Yeah, that's just kind of what I was thinking. If we wait till we hear the communications plan and provide feedback on that, and can get a comprehensive plan for the next year, that could be the best way to go. But again, I agree with you, Mayor Tate. If we have like a motion specific to the budget or something else, then that we could probably deal with.
Okay, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, just on that item, I would like to, Councillor McMath has made a very good point, but I think the ship has sailed when it comes to the budget, but there's some issues coming up about getting communications to people in the community. One is the OCP, which I will address later in my verbals, but I think that's a very important thing to bring up, and we can deal with it in that little workshop, because we're, in my opinion, we're not reaching the people in the community. Everybody's locked down in COVID. They're not meeting in the coffee shops. They're not talking about things. They're hunkered down in their homes. And I think the best way to get them when they're hunkered down in their home is to mail them a letter. Not everybody comes on the, anyway, this is a talk for our next week. But I just want to say that's a very, very good point. And I think we better pursue it, but the ship has sailed when it comes to the budget.
Okay, there was also a follow-up discussion as to whether or not the COVID funds should fund the e-bike. Did council want to make that type of a resolution or leave it? You did hear a rationale back from staff as to it could be or couldn't. There was certainly that conversation. So not seeing Councillor, I'll go to Councillor Beddoes, and then I think Councillor Logans.
I think it's a wise move to move it into that other funding stream. We can justify it, gives us another asset, and saves another budget. So I wouldn't have a problem with that e-bike being moved to that, whatever you call it, the contingency fund for COVID.
The COVID relief fund.
Yeah,
Councillors, okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
I would agree with both Councillor Bateman and Councillor Beddoes. That's all I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion then. If I'm just raising that was an outstanding sort of item that I said would be business arising. So now I'm looking for a motion rather than opinion. Councillor Beddoes, I'll go to you then.
Yeah, I'll make that motion that we take that and to the COVID fund and put it in there. It's a smaller item, but yeah, I think it's the right spot for it. I'll make that.
Okay,
motion.
So then the motion would be that council directs staff to fund the e-bike from the COVID recovery fund.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
one.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Beddoes and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything on the motion specifically, Councillor McMath?
I just don't understand why, are we moving it to another column to save that committee's budget? And then is this move going to jeopardize other pieces for us in our COVID application?
Nope, staff, as I heard, felt that it would fit that particular one. I think where it came up from the past was that was the fund that was identified, but that was before the COVID-19 fund got announced and established. So I don't see it impacting anything.
I interpret it like,
I'll have Ms. Gray answer if there would be an impact in another area, please.
Through your worship. So it would just be a matter of reallocating the funds to come out of a different reserve fund. There wouldn't be a property tax impact, but it would just be saving the $3,500 in the climate action rebate fund, reserve fund, and taking those funds instead from the COVID Safe Restart Fund.
okay.
Okay. Any other speakers? Anything on the resolution? Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor McMath is opposed, and that carries unanimously. Okay, or pardon me, it carries, not unanimously. Okay, it carries. Okay, item 6.2 is the COVID-19 Safe Restart Reserve Fund bylaw. So I'll turn this over to Ms. Gray again, please.
Thank you. So just a quick, I don't have a formal presentation for this. I hope that the report is self-explanatory. This is just a bylaw to create a specific reserve fund to deposit the $2.9 million of COVID Safe Restart funds into a reserve fund. So it'll have specific rules and guidelines, and interest will be earned on it and can be deposited to that fund. So it's just a way to be more transparent with how we're tracking this and recording this going forward. So it's just a recommendation to create a reserve fund bylaw specifically for the COVID grants. In this case, another option if council didn't support this would be, because there's limitations on what we can use the funds for, it would just be sitting in deferred revenue over the next few years here. But staff recommends that we just create a specific reserve fund for it, so it can be reported separately on our annual budgeting, and as well as just tracked separately and reported on our annual financial statements as is required by the fund. So I'll just leave it there. If council have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gray. The question I had was just how and when do we report, but you answered that it's within our annual report statements. So there's whoever's shuffling, can you please either stop shuffling or please mute? Like you.
Yeah, I apologize. I seem to have no control over my gizmos tonight.
Okay, and then Ms. Gray, just as a follow-up to that, in a conversation with another mayor, I'd heard that what you're recommending is a very prudent and wise approach, because having the funds just sort of sit in a fund not allocated to anything could cause reporting challenges or maybe a problem down the road. It could be argued that if you're not using these funds and don't have them allocated or into a reserve fund, then you probably don't need them. So you should just send the balance back. So that was kind of some sentiment. But again, without even having a guideline document come out from the ministry, everyone is just wanting to be appreciative of the funds and also very cautious and stick to exactly how the letter outlined they've been used. So that makes the most sense to me. Councillor St. Pierre, you had a question?
No, I just like to move the motion.
Okay, go ahead, please. That is council give first, second, and third reading to COVID-19 Safe Restart Reserve Fund Bylaw number 794/2020. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bateman. Anything to comment on the motion? Councillor St. Pierre is the mover. No. Councillor Bateman, any comment?
Yeah, I had a question, and that's regards one of the items on the list of eligible costs are services for vulnerable persons, e.g. persons living with disabilities, mental illness, or addictions, persons experiencing homelessness or other vulnerabilities. And I don't think we don't have any spending on the books that would apply to at this moment. But I'm wondering, say, at the community grant hearings in March, and we see some applications from Crisis Line or mental health services, is it possible at that moment to say, okay, we can potentially tap, if it's incredibly tight with our $65,000 with community grants, can we tap into the Safe Restart at any time, or only at this budget planning moment?
Well, my understanding is this would operate similar as any other reserve fund that we have. So should council wish to transfer, then we would need to do a resolution to transfer the funds over, and it would go through that process. So that way it shows the transparency, but also how we're moving funds from one to the next.
Okay, thank you.
And then Ms. Gray, if I'm incorrect, please state, but that's what we've done, is we could do a budget transfer and not have to wait till the end of next year. We would have that opportunity as it arises.
Correct. Yeah. So we could, at any time, if it was a material enough amount, we can go through a formal process to amend the budget once it's been adopted. So there would always be that option on the table. But if it's smaller amounts that are occurring through the year or come up, as you said, at community grant time, and if it's council's desire to use those funds, a resolution can be passed directing staff to formalize a transfer of funds or use of funds from the bylaw, and depending on the value would be depending on if we need to do a formal a financial plan amendment at that time just for that one item. So, and again, I anticipate with this reserve fund bylaw that if further that one category, there wasn't a lot of further information on what would be considered an eligible cost. So as further information is provided, staff will definitely keep council up to date on that. And if further clarity is given and it warrants an amendment to this reserve fund bylaw, staff will definitely present that to council for consideration.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. So I'll call the question, please. All those in favor? Any opposition? Nope. So that carries unanimously. Thank you. So we'll move on to our next item, which is item 6.3, revision bylaw 802/2020. I'll turn this to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. As noted in the report, staff received a request to review some previous information about the sewer at the corner of Grant Road and West Coast Road. And staff have been able to determine that there was in fact an error in the map that was included in the original sewer servicing area bylaw back, I believe it was in 2002. That's not the issue here tonight, but staff is going to recommend that council do what's called a revision to the original bylaw, where they can replace the map or text or things like that without having to go through another or having the applicant go through an actual petition process, which was already done back when the original bylaw was passed. But in order to do that, council must have a revision bylaw in place authorizing council to make those certain changes, corrections, what have you. So that is what is in front of council tonight for 3 readings. So should council give that 3 readings tonight, the revision bylaw will come back for final adoption on the 14th, along with the SSA revision bylaw to make that correction.
Okay, that seems straightforward. So I'm going to put the motion out, and that is that council give first, second, and third reading to revision bylaw number 802/2020. Is there
So
a mover,
moved.
please? Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please. Okay, there's none opposed, so that carries unanimously, though. Still just one vote there, Councillor Logans. I don't know what that furry thing was. I saw a paw. Okay, there's no new business, but there was one other outstanding item from our budget deliberations, and that was the conversation or the discussion we had around council remuneration and whether or not to form and the committee and that outstanding amount. So Ms. Mushada?
Thank you, Worship. We've missed item 6.4, the council procedure amendment bylaw.
Right, okay, I'm sorry. I will leave this for now as a new business, but something to think about, and we'll go to 6.4. Okay, so back to Ms. Mushada, please.
Yeah, so what is in front of council tonight is an amendment to the council procedure bylaw as directed at a previous meeting to consider evening committee of the whole meetings in the evening. So the bylaw has been drafted to have the meetings at 7 p.m. but staff are asking council to consider a 6 o'clock start time if that is pleasing to council. And if you have any other questions, I can answer them.
Okay, just was it 7 p.m. for regular council and then committee of the wholes to commence at 6 p.m.?
The amendment is for committee of the whole meetings only. Currently, the bylaw is for 7 p.m. for regular meetings, and that will remain the same. It's just currently the committee of the whole meetings are held at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So the recommendation or the bylaw is written to change that to 7 p.m. but staff are asking council to consider a 6 p.m. start time.
Okay, so that would be what is suggested. So I'll go to Councillor Logans first and then to Councillor McMath.
Thank you. I actually wanted to hear what Councillor McMath has to say, but I do support the 6 o'clock start time for sure. I think my intent with this, though, wasn't necessarily to put a time on it, but just to make sure that it works for everyone. That's sort of why it was hard to determine whether or not we should add committee of the whole to the previous motion that brought this forward. But it'll be interesting to hear what Councillor McMath has to say. I think like with the other meetings, it was easier to say, keep them in the evenings, like with the regular council meetings, because that's sort of what we signed up for from the beginning. So that's where this one's a bit of a challenge, but the 6 o'clock is a good start time in my mind.
And our in-cameras start at 6 too. Councillor McMath?
For me, it would be easier if it was at 7. I have shift work, so if I get off at 6, sometimes like I'll get stuck and I can't get off right at that time. So if we're gonna make it for the evening, then for me it's 7. But I know that staff would rather it be closer, but it's either I start at 6 or I'm leaving at 6. So it's morning or it's 7 o'clock.
Okay. Councillor Beddoes, did you have your hand up?
No, but I can comment if you like. I think the fact that the original intent was to make sure that all councillors can attend the meeting. And from what I hear from Councillor McMath, it would be very difficult for her to attend a 6 o'clock meeting. So unfortunately, I think that we should stay with the 7 o'clock. That way also it's a little less confusing. Our meetings are at 7, whether it's a committee of the whole or a regular council meeting. And Councillor Logans doesn't seem to have a problem with 7, but McMath does. And I don't know if anybody else has a problem, but I don't have a problem with either one. But in order to have us all there, I'd like to have it left at 7.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
I was just curious. I understand that this is strictly for committee of the whole, but whether or not this is at some point would include special meetings or any of the other meetings that might come up, and if they're all going to be same time, same place, which I would recommend. Basically 7 o'clock on Mondays is what it's looking like, but no switching around. It's just 7 o'clock Mondays.
Yeah, with where we have, and that's why like tonight's special council meeting started at 7, right? It is easier to plan when things don't bounce around. The only challenge would be that is we do tend to have in camera at 6. And my only comment is I don't have a problem starting at 7, but we also need to consider how we use our time. So, and staff have put in here, you know, we should probably finish at 10. I agree with that. I know that we have to pass a resolution when it hits 11, but the evening gets really stretched out, like virtual participation or in person, it's a long time. And then I always feel, and this is just perhaps myself as chair, I feel the need, okay, we have so many things, let's get through this. But when you rush, I don't feel that's setting good policy. I think it's better than that we finish and schedule on. I know that procedural bylaw, you have up to 10 minutes to speak. You can speak on every, you know, and that's where I've tried to find ways to tighten up on time. Robert's rules in our procedural bylaw would suggest that you can ask questions but not get into your commentary until there's a resolution on the floor, and then you speak strictly on the resolution, and then you make amendments if you wanted to add in other pieces. So that's in a way to sort of guide the conversation. So, you know, and we're trying to be flexible here to allow every councillor to participate fully and to have questions asked, but sometimes some of that may need to happen in advance. So that's where I don't have a problem with starting at 7, but I don't want to be meeting till 11. And I don't think any of you would want to either per se. So let's all think about how we use our time. There was, when I first got elected and I went to a newly elected forum, there was a councillor that I had sort of respected, and she had sort of suggested you should write the word wait down all the time on everything, the word wait. And you ask yourself, why am I talking? Am I talking to contribute? Am I talking because I have a valid question? Am I just talking to be heard? And so those are some things, and I know that I have a tendency to ramble myself as I'm doing right now, but I'm just trying, as we're making these changes, and we haven't had much opportunity for governance check-ins or even the learning that would happen at places like AVIC, UBCM, you know, how do you get into chairing good meetings or participating, because all of that has been canceled. So perhaps and COVID and the way things have changed our meetings have also have an impact. But just going forward, I think that's something to keep in mind. If you want to wait until the night, then fine, talk on everything for 10 minutes. But let's just, because you can't do both. I don't think it's possible to allow that amount of talking and finish at a reasonable hour. So it's on all of us to be succinct here. Councillor Logans?
Sorry, it takes me a while to unmute. Yes, on that note, we should probably put a motion forward on this, perhaps to have our meeting start at 7, for the COW meetings to start at 7 and end by 10 o'clock. I appreciate that too, because I know like Councillor McMath has to be up around 4. I have to be up around 5 every night too. I have to work after this meeting even and still be up at that time. So 10 o'clock adjournment sounds nice to me, but I'd be happy to make that motion if someone wants to second it.
So I think it's just that council give first, second, and third reading to Council Procedural Amendment Bylaw number 803, 72802, 2020. That in that our direction is that Committee of the Whole commence at 7 o'clock and adjourn at 10 p.m. So that's moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor McMath. Anything further on Councillor McMath?
Carolyn has something to say.
Okay, Ms. Mushata. So I couldn't tell where you were pointing. Ms. Mushata?
That's not the appropriate motion. I would recommend that council give the bylaw first reading Then we need to give it second reading as amended to strike 11 p.m. and insert 10 p.m. Then you can give it third.
Okay, so since we have not passed this, can the mover and seconder just withdraw first, second, and third? And then we'll restart that then, now that I have that, so that council give first reading to council procedural amendment bylaw number 803-728-02-2020. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor McMath. Okay. Now that I have that in place, so I'll call the question. All in favor of first reading? Councillor Beddoes?
I just want a clarification on the motion. This is just for a committee of the whole. Is that correct? This is not a regular council meeting, which is still scheduled to end at 11. Am I hearing that correct?
Yeah, so we can do that now that I have the procedure in order, and now we're on second reading. That will be the question. So Ms. Machado, where it says to strike out, would that be just committee of the whole or regular council as well?
That's correct. It's pertaining only to section 37(1) of the council procedure bylaw, which is specific to committee of the whole meetings.
Okay.
Okay, so
Clear
we'll
on
move
that.
second reading then with the amendment to clause or article 37.1. Would that satisfy Ms. Machado?
Yeah, we'll draft the motion would read that council gives second reading as amended to strike 11 p.m. and insert 10 p.m.
Okay, so that is the motion. So I'll look for someone to move that, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. On the motion, anything? So this would just be for committee of the whole, but I think in general, it's good to target a 10 p.m. adjournment. Just, I don't work, but my day starts early, so just that, not that it's all about me, but anyway, Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, just we still have that option if 10 o'clock rolls around and there's one thing left on the agenda that we can do in 5 minutes. We have the option to vote to continue for another 10 or 15 minutes, because I hate to have to shut her down at 10. And as we did to Ms. Gray the other day, if there was time available, we waited all night. If it's just one item, do we still have that option to extend it for specific, exceptional circumstances?
Ms. Machado?
Correct.
Yes,
Thank you.
we do.
Good.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Okay.
Well, not that
Anything?
happy.
Okay. So anything further on second? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Well, that would be me. No, it carries unanimously. And Ms. Machado, then we give third reading as well then?
That's correct.
Okay, so
Okay, so
ask that
moved.
council give third by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Okay, all those in favor? None opposed, that carries unanimously. Okay, so that brings us to the new business item, and this is the one that I was raising on council remuneration. That was Councillor Beddoes sparked that conversation earlier. So a question to staff, is there an outstanding resolution where this work would kick off in 2021, or what direction can we provide to examine this?
Thank you, Your Worship. We're able to do a little bit of research while council was having that discussion. So this originally came forward in February 2019 when council discussed the remuneration. There was a motion put forward to create a committee to review future remuneration, and it did not succeed. The bylaw for remuneration was brought forward to council in July of 2019, again asking council if they had a desire for a committee, and no motion was made for that. So there are no outstanding resolutions with respect to a remuneration committee.
Okay, so from my recollection though, the first time that the motion came forward and failed was to look at the current term system is how I took it. And given that the recommendation came from the public, And I don't want to rehash that because I don't have this in front of me, but that potentially was why it failed. In terms of what Councillor Beddoes raised, it's actually longer catch up because there was a citizen advisory committee that existed back in 2008 that put forward recommendations to the then council, but the council at that time didn't accept all of the recommendations. And from what I recall hearing from Councillor Parkinson is that they reduced down what the committee had even suggested. So it's actually it's more than 10 years of catch up is just what I wanted to say there. But I do feel that it's always awkward for council to vote in its own raise or for us to do the field work on what it is. It is something better that is sort of a citizen-led committee. So I'll just ask a member of council, is this something that you would want to put forward for staff to look into for 2021? It could just be a motion that staff report back on the formation of a citizen advisory committee to review council remuneration starting 2022, something like that. Councillor Beddoes?
Notice of motion.
No.
Notice of motion?
No. I just wanted to, I don't mind putting a motion through, but in order to get this kicked off in the time of COVID, I'd be much more comfortable just making a recommendation that a 5% raise for council and mayor for the 2021, and then this other committee to be set up for 2022 and beyond, which is the last year of our 4-year mandate. I go back to what we originally talked about, and we talked about it at length because it's quite a hot button item. And we did agree that we were catching up, and the two raises that we put in was just catch up and not even that, and that we were going to gradually ease in another couple of raises. At least that's what I thought we were doing. And so when it comes to this budget, this is the time when we should put it in. And I think a 5% for next year is not unreasonable. But you're my colleagues. It affects you as well. So I'd like to hear on your comments about that.
We need a notice of motion so we can get a report on that.
Okay, so Councillor Beddoes,
Sure.
Can you write something out and then we can, and then if you have it prepped for the regular council meeting, then it could come off in both. You could do both bullets then.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Councillor McMath?
I just wanted to thank Councillor Beddoes for bringing this forward because I appreciate that it's maybe like a hot topic politically, but because people have avoided it or used it in different ways, this job is financially ostracizing to most people. So it's impossible to get a good spectrum of the community when people can't afford, especially now, to participate. And it's just fortuitous that Councillor Logans and I happen to have jobs where we can structure our work lives around these meetings, but that's not normal. So if we decide to run again, or if we don't decide to run again, I'd at very least want the opportunity for someone else from the public who works full time to be able to participate and be a representative with this group. So thank you so much, Councillor Beddoes, for bringing it forward.
Okay, so we'll move on and we'll get a notice of motion. And I think I'd like, I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor McMath, but also allow other councillors to weigh in with their perspective. So there's, for that, we'll just move on. I misunderstood something there, so that's fine. Okay, so next up is correspondence requiring action. And here we have an item.
Mayor,
Yes?
Point of order under new business. I do have a concern that didn't seem to come up that we talked about last meeting, and I thought Councillor Bateman was bringing forward under a notice of motion, and he was going to ask for permission to deal with it tonight, to deal with the food bank. They have.
My understanding is that's coming to the regular council meeting on.
It will not be in time.
Okay, so.
If I could speak to it very briefly.
We don't have anything in. Okay, so okay.
It's at your discretion, but there is a matter that came forward, and in order to have it for the Christmas season, it would have to be dealt with tonight, and it was a matter of moving $750 out of the contingency fund for a specific project. And I do have the project on my phone here that I could read out if you so wish. If it's out of order, it's out of order.
I'm sorry, I thought we put in the email that either it came forward or it would just go to the regular one and nobody spoke. So that's why it's going to the one in December.
Well, all I had coming to this meeting was the items that we postponed from that we didn't finish at the last regular meeting. So I'm not aware of a notice of motion for tonight. Specifically, what I've seen was all flowing through to the regular council meeting. So
I was under the impression that there was going to be a motion made by Councillor Bateman, but
okay,
could
so
be wrong.
I'll go to Councillor Bateman, and I'm completely out of order now here, but that's
Yeah.
fine. Councillor Bateman?
So this was a notice of motion regarding the Sooke Food Bank and whether we can donate some money out of contingency before year end. And as Ms. Musada noted, that if the notice of motion was brought forward on the 14th, it could not be discussed until the next council meeting. So the request had been made to council to waive the requirement so that we can discuss it on the 14th and therefore could get monies direct to the food bank immediately thereafter. However, the $750 item you mentioned, Councillor Beddoes, that's a separate matter, but undoubtedly related. So I'd be interested in hearing what that's about.
So I don't know what this is about. So this is where procedurally I'm having a problem. So I understand the one on the food bank for the December 14th meeting, and council at that time can decide to waive notice because we would have it all there. I don't have anything regarding anything other. I don't know about anything else for $750. So I'll ask council, and I don't even know what to ask you to waive because I don't to waive notice on.
Do you want to hear what the thing is, and then you guys can decide, or if it's out of order, it's out of order. But
it's just it's out of order because when we're talking about what we're deliberating on, can it be brought forward to the December 14th meeting?
I'm trying to look at a date here, and my feeling is that I'd have to look at the schedule when they deliver the hampers because it's all involved around delivering the hampers. So
okay, so perhaps what we'll do is I'll ask you a bit more about that on your council verbal update. Okay.
Sure.
And so
sure.
for now,
yeah, that's three things I got to say on that. But that's fine. I have it here. I can read it. If not, I can live with it. But unfortunately,
okay, can you please just leave it for now until we move to council verbal reports? So I'd like to move to item 8.1, which is the dark sky policy for light pollution. So this is an item of correspondence that has been come forward from actually since November 9th. So I'll turn it over to Councillor St. Pierre, who requested this.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. This is more of a question for Mr. Carter. I'm curious as to what sort of regulations we might have in terms of our lighting. We've got a large number of, we have some large developments going in at Charters, Drennan, so on and so forth. And I think one of the things that a lot of the neighbors probably appreciate is not having huge amounts of light coming out. And, you know, part of the rural character of Sooke is actually not having a huge amount of light pollution. So I'm curious as to whether or not we have any sort of rules around that, what they might want to be, especially with the building bylaw at, you know, second reading at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask staff there.
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor St. Pierre. Right now, bylaw 404 subdivision development does specify for LED lighting, but it does not specify for sort of a softer light lighting LED requirement, which is what we'll be addressing in the bylaw requirement when we go to revise that bylaw going forward into early next year.
That's wonderful news. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor McMath.
In that review, when it gets brought forward, besides the development aspect, I'm sure it is, but I just need to ask, are you guys taking into consideration like other businesses or sports activities that use like floodlights at nighttime to like maintain practices, host games, things like that?
Yeah, in terms of lighting for building development, it would be frontage improvements. So it would be in particular to street lighting, which we would set the requirements for. Anything else that would be developed, it would be under the development permit, and it could be a requirement under the development permit. A lot of the sort of concerns as far as they were presenting were the light pollution up in areas with regards to house lighting, which is very difficult to put an enforceable bylaw requirement on.
So you're not touching anything but residential?
No, sorry, it would be residential, any frontage improvements for developments, whether commercial or whatnot. If it was on site, it would be under the development permit, but if it was off-site improvements, that would fall under the 404 requirements that we would have.
And then would you grandfather properties that already have their lights established?
I believe you'd have to, unless you wanted to sort of make the requirement to have them change them at the time. I could refer to Matthew on that one, or Mr. Paolo.
So I guess it's a bit early though, because this is subdivision 404 is what you're looking, is where this change would happen, and that's what you're looking to potentially amend or change or update next year. So there'd be an opportunity to get more details there, or I'm just trying to sort out the process here.
That's correct.
Okay, so I was a bit surprised actually that this wasn't in place, because when there was a land use and development committee, I thought there was a lot of discussion around street trees and lighting, and I had thought that the changes were that the lighting would be downward directed, so that when you do have street lights, it's for sidewalks. You know, if people are looking, it's to keep the light up the sidewalks and not to light up the sky. And while and something obviously have changed. I'm looking at my window, they're all downward. Now they're probably not LEDs, but it's not illuminating the entire sky outside. It's all downward focused. So I tend to agree with the correspondent here and Councillor St. Pierre that should be the way to go. And also in our parks where we do have wildlife nesting. And I raise this because since I've been mayor, there's been many times where hydro, for example, has replaced a street light out in the community, and after a lot of follow-up has replaced it at a shared cost with the district to a downward focused light, because the rural properties in that area lose their whole night sky entirely, and it changes the whole characteristics. So this has come up numerous times. So it's disappointing that we didn't see this come in places like Viewpoint, where now there's just, what are you lighting? You don't need to light that. It's a sidewalk. It's meant for safe egress. But in terms of ball fields and the like, we want our players to be safe. So of course the appropriate lighting should be in here so that those activities can be enjoyed. And I think a lot of them have bird nests on top of them, which sort of shows that they have the best, they put in a good feature there for the birds. Okay, other comments on this item of correspondence? So it sounds like there is nothing in place, but there are plans in the works. Councillor,
I have
okay.
one comment, but I don't think I'm on.
I'll go to Councillor Lajeunesse and then Councillor Bateman then.
Yeah, so sort of a related topic, and this is not to do with public lighting, but with individual property owners. I know it was a few years back, the condos in front of my place, there's I think 16 units there, and they put up floodlights to light their parking lot, but they're not actually directed at their parking lot, they're directed right into my windows. And so I know in Mr. Hockenhull's letter, he did mention individual property owners doing those sorts of things. And I talked to Bylaw, and we don't have any lighting bylaws in effect. And so rather than put a spotlight on my roof to kind of fight fire with fire, it'd be nice if there was a way to deal with those type of situations.
Okay, thank you. Back to staff then. In that instance where maybe lighting is not directed accordingly, what avenues do residents have to have that rectified? I mean, some could say go talk to your neighbor, but that isn't always. Sometimes it's not knowing who they are, or it may not be something someone is comfortable to do for different reasons.
Yeah, it may not end well.
Any comment from staff? Okay.
Yeah, I believe Councillor Lajeunesse made a good point there in terms of identifying that there weren't any bylaws established to have something like this to be enforced. So anytime there's a matter that is of concern for the public where there's a desire to have enforceability, if we have bylaws in place that would direct staff as to how to enforce those specific requirements, then we could see to those. So with the establishment of the Land Use and Development Committee next year, if there's certain on-site developments that council would like staff to look into and vet through the Land Use and Development Committee, such as lighting, that might be an opportunity to put more specifics around how these matters could be addressed. And then in turn, if adopted in a bylaw, then a bylaw enforcement can go and address those concerns with the individual property owners.
Okay, so seemingly that we have you know, minimal information. We have some information on this from both what our staff has shared verbally as well as from the writer, and we do have the land use policy, land use committee forming. So perhaps what council could do now is that council directs staff to raise the that council directs staff to refer the item of a dark sky or a lighting bylaw to the land use, to the new Land Use and Development Committee for discussion and feedback.
So moved.
Okay, something like that. Councillor
I'll second
Bateman,
that.
seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. So on the motion, Councillor Bateman, anything?
No, in the interest of time, I will zip it.
Okay, more to come. It's moving it forward though. Councillor St. Pierre, anything? Nope. Okay, so there's a motion there. I'll just call the question then. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. So verbal reports. I will start with Councillor Beddoes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. I actually had two, and now it's come to three. But I thought I'd give all councillors an update on Sea Park. Things are changing rapidly down there, and I requested that the manager send out a situation report where we were. They sent it to the mayor, Councillor Bateman, myself, and Councillor Lajeunesse. There was one item in there that's actually an in-house thing that shouldn't go out to the public. So I was just going to take a few minutes to update everybody of what's going on, if that's all right. First of all, Steve Noki has done a wonderful job down there during this COVID. Just wanted to let you know that now it's masks are mandatory, and they've had to cancel some of their select indoor fitness programs. Connor Dowsett, I guess, a grade 12 EMCS student, is a successful applicant for a position on the committee. And that we're very happy about that. We're trying to get youth involved, and we've succeeded. The Sports Box update, the CRD and DOS Sports Box Land Construction and Operation Agreement is currently drafted and is in receiving feedback from the project team. Sea Park has been working on preliminary items on this project, including land surveying, geotechnical information, high-level design, and development permit requirements. So that is moving along at very good speed as well. The golf course closed on November 15th, and our sales are up 30% over last year. It was a big hit to have during the COVID. The last thing is just a statement by Mr. Noki. 2020 has been a tough year with plenty of challenges and learning for the recreation sector across the province and across the country. CPark has risen to the challenge and continues to provide the safe access to health and wellness opportunities for the citizens of our community. CPark would like to thank the community and the Commission for their support through these difficult times. Further to this, I would like to personally acknowledge the CPark team for their unwavering commitment and effort to ensure safe recreation services continue in the face of so many unknown factors and challenges, which I think sums it up really well, that they've just done a bang-up job considering what we're all dealing with. The second report is the OCP. We had our meeting last Wednesday, and it was very, very nice presentation by the contractor and staff. Things are going fairly well considering the difficulty of trying to communicate during COVID. And there's where the big problem is. Normally we get a lot of feedback from people in coffee shops talking about it, talking to their friends, but nobody's meeting. Everybody's locked up in their houses, and we're having a great deal of difficulty reaching people. A good portion of the community, which is almost all of them, a majority of them, are don't even know what's going on. And even though we had 500 respond, and I hope you all have access to this document about what they found in the surveys, but they reached approximately 500 people. And to go forward, I think it's difficult to do that. So always looking for some ideas from council. They deal with people all the time, how we can try and engage more people. Some of the comments, we've had some of our committee people phone business people, and they say, I don't have the time to fill out anything. And I just barely heard about it or not heard about it at all. It was reported in the findings that we're not reaching families and we're not creating much excitement in the community. No fault to the staff, no fault to the our contractor. It's just this COVID is just killing us when it comes to this. And one of the concerns we have is if we finish without the proper consultation, I'm not so sure we get the community's buy-in, but that's just an overall problem. I think the contractor's doing the best they can in the circumstances, and staff is certainly doing that as well. There's a couple of specific requests to us, council, and one of them is they would like to talk to us. The committee members feel that we are a wealth of knowledge. We talk to a lot of people in the community of what they would like to see, and they would like to meet with us and ask us questions about what we feel are. I don't even know how this is appropriate or not. I'm just throwing it out there because that was their request, and just to pick our brain about what we see as some of the emerging themes over the next 10 years. You can comment about that after if you wish. And the last one, of course, is they would like to have something, a fact sheet or something from staff that explains some of these developments that are going on right now. They're getting questions from the public and their blank looks and their stares. And I use, for example, we have the Kennedy Street North, 27 units, Wadham's Farm, 133 housing units, Charters 75, Drennan 170 units. That's 450 units going in, housing units going in that area. So I'm just wondering if staff, through you, Your Worship, can supply us with a rundown of what major housing projects we have in the community and the numbers of units total that we'd be dealing with. And the committee is specifically asked for that.
Okay. So just
that,
if you could
that's
pause.
it.
Okay, so just a question on that to staff then. Does this something that council needs to resolve to do? It's a request from the committee, so would that need to have an endorsement from council, or can staff just provide that back to the committee?
In terms of providing development information to the committee, that's something that staff can provide to the committee. We've actually discussed internally this week about collecting that data and possibly displaying on a map as well, just to show those locations. So specifically regarding that point that Councillor Beddoes brought up, that staff can certainly assist the committee with providing that information. And I think the other information that was being asked was more about direction on the committee itself having discussions with council, and we weren't certain specifically what that would entail, but staff's hope was that if we at least provided the development information, that might help tie the committee members more into what's happening within the community right now.
Okay, and that's fine. And I think Councillor Beddoes is maybe just work with staff in terms of when would the engagement with council be. If all 7 of us attended a meeting, then you would need to think about your agenda for that meeting and how much time or discussion and so forth. So, you know, I have no problem working with the committee in that way. I just need to think about just logistically, where does that fit in the process that you're on right now?
Yeah, my reason for asking that is that I wasn't sure what information we can give out to the public. I mean, sometimes with people coming, you know, these developments aren't in a stage that give a lot of details, but I thought just a broad brush would be helpful. So I appreciate just giving council an update of where things are and that people are interested in doing the best job they can. So.
No, that's great, Councillor Beddoes. And then you had a third item you just wanted to.
Yeah, I'm afraid to bring this up. Yeah, I maybe it can wait, but I'll just read this and you can give me some. It'll only take 1 minute. Hi, Councillor Al. Our Christmas Bureau has decided to distribute hampers this year using volunteer drivers. This is in lieu of client pickup. We are asking the volunteers for their time. However, we think it's appropriate to help defray their fuel costs. We'll be accommodating some 30 drivers and would like to give them each a $25 gas card. Given that Sooke has access to its share of the recently released COVID funds, I ask that action be given to purchase said cards for the Christmas Bureau volunteer delivery drivers. I think this would be a valid $750 expenditure for funds. Please advise. Thank you. And that's Mike Thomas, chair of the Christmas Bureau. And so, and the reason I brought it up tonight is, you know, we meet next time on the 15th, and in order to have things in place, I thought if it's $750 out of contingency fund, if we could do it some way tonight, if the council agrees, that might be a better way to go. But it's at the will of the chair, I guess. So.
Okay. Well, I'll put the motion forward now that we know that it is, and just in future, just, you know, I can't read your mind. So if I just know that this is coming, I can work with staff.
Yeah, I thought you knew it was coming. Sorry,
no,
my apologies.
No idea. Councillor Logans?
Thank you. I am always in favor of the food bank, but I always have to say the same thing. When they do come forward with grants, their budgets are always incomprehensible, and they've admitted they do struggle with that because of the lack of volunteer time to actually provide us with budget information. But it is something that's a little sketchy to me. So that I always am a bit apprehensive about where that money is going or how it's being used. But I do obviously support the food bank and everything they do. I think they just in the past have needed extra help in that area. So I'm just weary of motions coming forward like this without that background information and without having a budget in front of us, but I am willing to support it.
Okay, so Councillor McMath, we don't have a motion yet, so.
So these, we're buying gift cards to give to volunteers, or are we giving money to the food bank to give to volunteers for gas money?
We're giving money to the, as I understand it, be giving $750 to the Christmas Bureau, and they will purchase gas cards for their volunteer drivers with that money.
Okay, thank you.
That's how I understand it too.
That was it 30? It was $20. 30 drivers and $25 each.
That's what his request was.
Okay, so you need a motion?
Yeah, so the motion.
I'll make the motion that we donate $750
from council contingency
to the Christmas Bureau
for gas cards for volunteer drivers.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. So on the motion, so we're clear, it's to the Christmas Bureau, gas guards, volunteer drivers.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And none opposed, that carries unanimously. And that's this year's council contingency.
And my apologies, Mayor. I should have been a little bit more forthcoming with you. I thought it was handled in another avenue, but I'll make sure in the future that everybody's appraised before surprise.
That always helps. Sharon doesn't like surprises. Okay, verbal updates. I'll go in, let's see here. Councillor St. Pierre.
So we had our last meeting of the Climate Action Committee to examine the terms of reference, and I'll expect a report from staff that will come to council soon on what we can use to actually formulate new terms of reference for the upcoming year. And that went very well, and many, many thanks to all the members of the Climate Action Committee. I, as official liaison, was part of the Climate Caucus meeting today. And sometime in the upcoming new year, I expect that initiative called Help Cities Lead will be coming forward. And that's essentially basically doing advocacy work with the province in terms of the PACE program, so different financing models for energy retrofits and so on and so forth, energy benchmarking for buildings, and basically trying to make our buildings more energy efficient and lower GHGs. So I don't have that presentation ready at this point, but we'll be expecting it in the new year. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Other councillors?
Okay, I'll jump in. Yeah, I attended the OCP steering committee virtually last week. Very interesting. And I do believe that any member of the public can attend that meeting by request. That's correct. Okay. And I had an interest, you know, I take screenshots, and there was, as Councillor Beto stated, there's some wonderful, there was the 13 emerging themes, and there was frequently asked questions. Is it permissible to share that coming out of those meetings, given that they are public meetings?
It's all public, so anything in a regular council or committee meeting could be shared. I think there's just a caveat that there's subject tos, like approvals, and anything from a committee requires final endorsement from council. So it's just where things sit.
Okay, all right.
But it's all public information, so.
Yeah, I've not seen that report that you showed us there, Councillor Beto. So
yeah,
that would be...
stop off at the office, get one printed up. It's got some great information. It shows you how how everything shook out when they did their surveys, and those little things they put in certain locations and had people put the dots on and stuff like that. There's some good work that's gone into it. It's just this COVID's killing us, just absolutely making it tough. But
is that the sort of thing that would be posted on the OCP page on the website? Potentially.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess
that would be a good idea to keep that page updated.
Well, I guess they people put that information in. To me, I don't have any problem sharing that knowledge, but it's just procedural. I'm not quite sure on the procedural part of it, but personally, I would think it'd be good. And thank you for attending and taking the interest.
Okay, Councillor Bateman has the floor. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm asking questions. The library board of directors met 2 Saturdays ago, and the exciting news there is that we've learned the timeline for construction is 1 year, not 18 months. So they're looking at October of next year for completion date, which is fantastic. I also attended parts of the Rising Economy online conference, which is very interesting, co-presented by the South Island Prosperity Project. And they released their economic recovery master plan for the Victoria region. There's also a lot of speakers from Washington State and Oregon, and talking about the Cascadia transportation and innovation corridors. And apparently, if Cascadia was to work as a unified regional economy, it would represent the 12th largest economy in the world, interestingly enough. Otherwise, there's just a week-long Zoom conference is far too long. I mean, I was burning out pretty early. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other updates from members of council? Okay, so I'll just share a few. I just wanted you to know that at the CRD Parks meeting, there was a proposal to increase parking at the Sooke potholes, as well as at some camping fees, and then also at one other park, Thetis Lake, from $2.25, I believe, to $7 a day. So I know that Councillor Logan shared out the Times Colonist article. It didn't quote me in it, but I was present for the meeting and supported the resolve to send it back to CRD staff. I know we inherited assets from the province this year. We implemented pay parking to offset the maintenance of those assets. I just struggled with a jump from $2.25 to $7 a day. It just seemed drastic. And while there has been significant use of our parks, a rationale for me is why just the potholes in Thetis Lake? Why isn't Elk and Beaver Lake charging for parking, for example, which is also very busy, as well as some others? So more to come, but it did generate some local news here. Last meeting, I shared that CFAX had mistakenly reported out that we were implementing all sorts of pay parking within the district here. They have confirmed now that that was their mistake. They mixed up Tofino with Sooke. So that's something that Tofino could answer to. So they have made that correction. So I appreciate that they at least had followed up with that. It then led to someone asking me why Tofino was doing that, but I had to redirect them to contact Tofino entirely, because I don't know. And then just some other pieces is that I would like to pick up on our advocacy work that occurred the week before UBCM. The ministers responsible that we met with have changed, except for the Solicitor General. So there is work outstanding for Ministry of Education as well as Minister of Transportation. And so it would be timely to do this, and also to follow up now. We have some outstanding items where we wrote letters regarding some penalties that our seniors were hit with, and we were sort of being led from one ministry to the other. So now it's just timely to pick up on that as well, follow up with both the new Minister of Finance and Minister of Municipal Affairs, just to resolve some of those items. So if there are any sort of outstanding advocacy items that you have or you would like to work with me on, please send me an email, and I'll leave it at that for now. Okay, so seeing that there was no one other, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor McMath. As always, it's great to see you all. It's the first time all of our council's been together in some time. So just take good care of yourselves and stay well and happy and healthy, and be kind and wash your hands, wear your mask. The list is growing, but I'm sure you know it all. So we'll leave it at that. And of course, if anything, reach out to me as you need to. Okay, but take care.
Okay. Good night all.
I'll call the question on adjournment. All in favor? Almost forgot to do that.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay, thank you very much, staff, and all my best, and thanks to you as well. Thank you.